Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to the MMA Shower, sponsored by Hatton James Legal. That's hattonjameslegal.co.uk, and Overst Events. That's overstevents.com. Your event just made easier. In this podcast, we're going to preview UFC 295, Prochazka versus Alex Pereira, and that's for the light heavyweight championship of the world, the UFC championship of the world, and we'll preview that. And before we get into the main podcast, the main part of the podcast, please remember you can contact the show, the MMA Show 7 at gmail.com. Twitter handle is the MMA Shower, and the Facebook page is Let's Talk MMA. SRBMedia. In this episode, we have got one or two fan questions, which is always welcome and always good. Yeah, so we're going to preview UFC 295, and as everyone will know, there's been a fairly major change. And I'll introduce my regular co-host and long-time podcast guest, Matt Penny. How are you, Matt?
Very well, very well. Hope you two are well. It's an absolute pleasure as always. We've had a couple of good cards this year throughout, as the UFC always put on. So a nice one towards the end of the year, and always a pleasure to break it down with you.
Thank you, Matt. And as Matt indicated there, that there's another person, a special guest on the podcast, and he's a long-time UFC fan. He's been to Vegas and he's watched shows there, and he's got a lot of knowledge. So it's Diamond, the Diamond from London. How are you?
Yeah, hi there. Yeah, good, thanks. It's good to be on. I appreciate you having me on. You're doing a great job, just want to say. And hopefully you can rival Joe Rogan. Yeah,
Okay, so we'll go on. We'll get into the main card, UFC 295, and we're going to go through the co-main and the main event, and I'm particularly excited about the main event. There's a number of backstories and side stories on how this has come together, and that's always interesting, as well as the fighting. It's always good to have a good story behind it, or a particular angle. But I just want to touch on, obviously this was going to be John Jones and Stipe Miocic, and legacy either way. Stipe would have cemented it, another notch. He's probably the greatest ever at heavyweight UFC anyway. But and John Jones, if he would have won, he would have been the greatest ever, as some people think anyway. But there's an interim title now, and Diamond, I'll go to you first. Interim, does it do anything for you? Is it worth it? Is it not? What's your opinion?
Well, personally, I think that it's a bit glorified, to be honest with you. I mean, what is it that it actually holds or means? That's what I always question. I was doing a bit of research into this, and supposedly they say it's to do with pay as well. So if that means that they get a higher pay out of it, okay, fair enough. But if it's just literally the title...
Matt?
Simon's definitely right. It's a bit glorified. I think it does have something to do with the pay-per-view points that fighters get, like to actually fight in an interim title fight, and then if you win it and then defend it, etc., or make it into the full title, if you were, that definitely has something to do with it. But at the end of the day, it's a number one contender's belt. That's how I see it. So, I'm sure it does have some meaning, behind the scenes that we don't really, Dana would probably say that the fans don't understand, but we kind of get it. I'm sure it does have something to do with money, and it's a bit of a, it solidifies you as a number one contenders, and it makes your argument a lot stronger down the line if Dana tries and, skips you.
Yeah, from my perspective, it did have a certain value, and I think it came in to mitigate against a fighter getting a long-term injury. And I think from memory, I'm getting old, so I may not be correct. I think it was Dominic Cruz when he was out for 18 months, and he kept snapping his knee and hip or whatever, unfortunately. I think they brought it in then, the interim, and it was to, you couldn't have a champion just be out for a year and no title fight. So, but then after that, it got a bit sloppy, and someone would get it for this and that, and then this one.
The thing with that, that you're never recognised as the champion, are you? The interim champion. Nobody really takes you as a champion.
Yeah. You're right. If we said to each other, okay, name top 5 interim champions, we would probably struggle. But I think there was a legitimate reason once, like you can't have a champion sitting out for a year and never have a title fight. And then you wait for the champion to come back, and then they unify. But anyway, that's by the by. So we and the co-main obviously. Is the for an interim heavyweight title. So Matt, give us your opinion on sort of styles, matchups, and we'll come to the prediction after we've all given our input.
Well, just to go off the card in general, and just to touch on Jones and Miocic just quickly first, because this is the MSG headline card, right, of the UFC. It's kind of like, it's almost like their WrestleMania, of the year, and it's it's a lot more weak than we're used to. I mean, in past years we're used to cards where it's top to bottom, including like the early prelims, that they're star names. This year I kind of look through the whole card in general, and I'm not casual by any means, but I'm struggling to know some of the people in the prelims. A bit disappointing, but this time Jones is out legitimately. We've seen the pictures of his surgery and his scar, so we know it's real. But I think it's good for Pavlovich to get this shot. He's a monster. I really think he does have the tools to be a long-term heavyweight champion. And Aspinall, obviously, as a Brit myself, love to see him get a chance. And we've been calling out for a while for him to have a bigger step up in opponents, or even a title shot. So this is a good first step for him.
Okay, yeah. Some Diamond, yourself?
I mean, in terms of obviously the two main fights, definitely looking forward to the Yuri fight. And Pavlovich, I think that should be interesting as well. I think, like Matt said, the card is definitely weaker than what it was before, but at the same time, there's some interesting matchups. So
it's. I think it may be a tad early for Aspinall. He's got the raw material. There's no doubt about that. He has got some, really good skills. And Pavlovich, he's just raw power and one of those guys that just tears into people. And
it's a real step up. It's a real step up for Aspinall, and this is really going to test him. I mean, it's the top test really, which we have been calling for. But I think Pavlovich, with his ex-armed forces, which I didn't actually realise. There's a lot that I don't think people realise about him, because I think he's one of these guys that Dana has tried to bury and not really give the good chance to in the heavyweight division. So ex-armed forces, he's going to have another level of mindset, I think, and the lethal power that he has is just incredible. So Aspinall is good. I think he's really good. Is he a monster like Pavlovich is and has shown to be? I'm not too sure.
Also, what I heard was that Pavlovich was meant to be alternate, so he was the backup fighter for Stipe versus Jones.
Oh, so you think he's had some kind of training camp then?
Yeah, from what I've heard. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But
that's interesting.
That's what they say. So does that mean he's been further along?
Yeah.
He's training than Aspinall.
And Aspinall himself said that he's basically rolling off the couch to take this fight, which, it sounds great if you go into a Bisping and win it, right? You can say, oh yeah, I've just done it by, rolling out of bed. But if you lose, people can kind of turn to you and say, well, they question that decision.
Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't know Pavlovich was a backup fighter, so that would certainly be an advantage for him from obviously a physical fitness perspective, cardiovascular fitness, and sharpening your skills as well. So, but
I'm kind of happy for both these guys, because Jones for a long time openly said that he probably wouldn't fight either of these guys. and hinted that after Miocic it could have been retirement for him, or he'd only take absolutely massive.
Or if Nagano came back or something like that,
I think he may have openly said that these guys probably aren't what he's looking for. So at least these guys have got a top chance, even if it is interim. At least they have a good chance to submit and put what they want and put a good claim.
Yeah, it's a big stage for him. It's a massive fight, co-main event. So yeah, definitely an opportunity.
Well, I've just had a thought that obviously whoever wins this is the interim champ, but then we've still got Jon Jones, let's say the real champ, but they will still have to do. When I say they, I mean UFC. They will have to do Jon Jones versus Miocic, and then whoever wins that will fight one of these guys. So I'm not sure if you're following my logic.
Yeah, it's going to be long and drawn out, and I'm quite surprised. If it wasn't anybody else but Jon Jones, I think they would have dropped the title completely, because I mean this injury is going to take 6 months to fully rehab and get to 100%, and then he's going to have a fight camp on top of that. Anybody else but Jon Jones, I think the title would have been taken off him. I think he's held on to that title probably wrongly. Jamal Hill dropped the title and did the honourable thing.
Yeah,
that's true, because with heavyweight, the title's been switching left, right, and centre, hasn't it? Because of these injuries. But like you said, with Jon Jones, it's a bit of a different story.
Mm-hmm. But the fight when it happens, Jon Jones is Miocic, it's going to be Pavlovich versus whoever Aspinall, whoever is the interim champ, versus Jones or Miocic. But sometimes logic doesn't come into it in the UFC, so we'll wait and see. But you're right, it is a lengthy layoff. Yeah,
it is. It's going to be very drawn out, and it's almost got to a point where a lot of people doubted that we were actually going to see Jones Miocic, and then we finally got it. And I don't know about you two, but I was really hyped for this fight. Sort of September.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking, like, finally, because this kind of was deemed to be, the heavyweight go face-off and probably the go of the whole of the UFC and all of MMA. And now we haven't got it, and we're probably not going to get it for at least 9 months. I just don't. It might be like a Khabib Ferguson moment where it's just never going to be there, and the hype is never going to get to that peak level again.
Yeah. It was like a perfect storm of Jon Jones hinting that, this is probably going to be his last fight, and Miocic maybe do something similar, beat Jon Jones and say, there you go, I'm the greatest, no one's going to doubt that, but we shall wait and see. Okay. Prediction time. So, Diamond, the co-main, give us your...
I'm going Pavlovich.
You're playing it safe.
Yeah, I think he'll do it. Yeah.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, it's got to be Pavlovich. I think it's going to be quite devastating. Aspinall, as he said, he's only just literally rolling out of bed to take this fight and flying over to America and taking it. So against a monster like that Pav is, I just can't see Aspinall pulling it off. Sorry, I'd love to see a Bisping moment, but I don't think we'll see it. So I'm going to go Pavlovich win via KO.
Okay. Diamond, you didn't predict your...
via KO as well. KO. But what's interesting is if you look at the odds, they're actually similar. So, yeah, it's quite interesting. They don't really split them too much, to be honest with you. One's 10 to the 11, which is Pavlovich, and 5 to 6 is Aspinall.
Oh, okay. Yeah, pretty even, yeah.
I might whack £100 on Pavlovich then, I think.
Yeah. I would have expected Aspinall to be more of an underdog, but that's interesting. Okay, we'll go on to the main event and Prochazka versus Pereira, and this is like yourself, Matt. I was really looking forward to Jones versus Miocic, but I would say almost on equal measure, I'm looking forward to this one as well, and because Jiří got injured a while back, a year and a half or something like that, and maybe a bit longer. And I don't know if you guys recall, but he got injured in a weird way. And what I mean by that is because I was just refreshing myself before the podcast, and it was in sparring, but some training partner, shall we call him, he suplexed him in sparring, and he landed on his right shoulder and crushed all his, probably his rotor cuff and his, all that area around the shoulder, maybe clavicle. I can't remember the exact injury, but it was obviously bad enough that he was out and had to relinquish his belt. So, why would someone in sparring try to suplex him? But anyway, that's another story.
No, you won.
Hey?
So that's not the kind of training partner you want?
No, maybe he got beat up afterwards in the gym or something, I don't know. It just sounds ridiculous. So, but that was his injury, and then he had to relinquish the title, and he was going to fight Gurmit Pereira and all that kind of thing. So that's one interesting angle and / narrative, that he's coming back himself after a long time. Alex Pereira, who was the middleweight champion not too long ago, 8 months ago, lost the rematch in a devastating knockout by Adesanya, who since has lost the middleweight title to Sean Strickland. Pereira went up to light heavy and had not an amazing fight there, but he had a good fight, and now he's fighting for the belt. So, Diamond, I'll go to you first. Give us your thoughts on what is now the main event, 295.
Oh, yeah. I think it should be a great fight. It should be an exciting fight. Both styles are great, to be honest with you, for an exciting fight. So, I'm probably looking forward to this one. I think I've been doing a bit of research in terms of what's going on with this one. I mean, there's different connections. Teixeira, I think he fought Jiří last, didn't he? He's a training partner of Pereira, isn't he? So,
he's like a training partner, mental,
if not trainer even. But so that should be great from that angle. Jiří's I do rate him. I think he's a very good fighter. Like I said, exciting. So, looking forward to this one.
Anything on the fighting styles that gives you maybe a hint of how either fighter could win or lose? Or
if I break it down, I think if you think about striking, I think they're both very good strikers. Who would I edge it to? Possibly Pereira. Submissions, I would say Jiří. And then wrestling, I would say possibly Jiří again. So if I broke it down to them three, but I mean, there's not much in it, to be honest with you. I think it should be a great fight. I think they'll stay on their feet, and it should be explosive. Yeah.
I'll come back to you regarding these predictions, but you make a good point about how even in styles they are, and then Pereira 6'4", Jiří is 6'3", reach-wise 79-80 to Jiří, and there's a bunch of other stats and I think even age-wise they're fairly similar in age. But if you look at their MMA record, this is where you get the contrast. Jiří's at 33 fights, 29-3-1, and Alex Pereira's had 8-2-0. So he's like a baby in terms of experience, but obviously he's been middleweight champion and he was a kickboxer for many years. So slightly misleading, those statistics, but in MMA they're actually factual. Okay, Matt, on to you.
Let's be honest here, okay? The end game is going to be Pereira versus Adesanya at light heavyweight. That's what the UFC want. Dana knows that fight sells. They can sell it as the rivalry that spans multiple weight classes. We can see it all in the stars. We know it's coming if Pereira wins it, right? We've already said Adesanya just lost at middleweight. It's now a good chance that he jumps up for him. Prochazka unbeaten in last 13 fights over 7 years. But just looking at his UFC career, he's fought guys that are on the way out or like on the the decline. They've already had their shots and missed their title shots. I think this is by far his toughest challenge against a guy who's like not even in his peak yet. He's really coming into his peak level. I mean, what a fight! I'm glad this took the main event spot and not Aspinall versus Pavlovich. This belongs here, and it's just really impressive to me how Pereira doesn't speak a lot of English, and he's not like big on social media, but somehow, he hasn't got a huge record either in mixed martial arts, but still he's able to keep himself in people's minds fresh, and always seems to grab those main event slots, and he always seems to get the big moments. But we all know it. We all know Dana is a businessman at the end of the day. He's a seller. He's a promoter. They are looking for Pereira to get the win here, and they're looking for more Pereira versus Adesanya down the line.
Yeah, no, that's a good, interesting angle there, and I never thought of that, to be honest, but it does make sense on a number of fronts, and I'm just doubting Adesanya's motivation, the way he lost against Strickland, and I didn't watch many interviews after that, but I was sort of reading the odd article here where he gave a strange response to his loss and so on and so forth. So, is he still in the fight game? Yeah.
He deserved to go into a title fight straight away at light heavyweight.
Who, Pereira?
No.
Adesanya. Yeah.
He was.
Well, he did have that other fight at light heavyweight and he lost. Yeah, but if you're a star name, then you obviously always jump the queue. And
I was about to say, when does that ever stop Dana?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it is the money and the pay-per-views that sell. And even though they've got to stay, impartial. They always say they'll be impartial to the fights, but they are a business. They are a promoter. They definitely have ideas about where they want to go with certain guys for sure, and that's got to be on their mind because they know it sells. And as a rivalry, it actually brings up quite a dark side in Adesanya. A lot of the time, he takes quite a jovial role in his rivalries, but that one is one that really brings out a dark side and a different persona to Adesanya.
Yeah,
there's a lot of history there, isn't it, between him and Pereira?
Yeah,
back in the days.
Yeah, and it's at one point everyone thought Pereira had Adesanya's number, but obviously he proved that not to be the case. But Prochazka, he's got some unusual skill. He does a lot of Zen Buddhism and other meditation techniques, and he lives that kind of lifestyle. So he's got a few not unusual features, but something sort of slightly out of the ordinary, and his skill set is very unorthodox.
Experience will come into it as well. Obviously, Jiří's had a lot of fights.
Exactly. That's why I mentioned their MMA fight record, that 33 fights in total against 10.
Yeah.
It could do. The only thing that could go against Prochazka is that obviously this layoff, we don't know how the injuries affected him. He's not had a warm-up fight, so there's a huge question mark there.
The experience is completely different, the levels of experience, but I actually think Pereira has had tougher fights in the few that he's had in UFC. I think he's had tougher fights than Prochazka. The guys that Prochazka's beaten, Teixeira, Reyes, Uzumir, they're all guys that kind of had a big rise and then a massive fall off, and he was one of those wins for them. I think Pereira just has maybe the more experience in the UFC in the bigger moments against the bigger guys.
Yeah.
And you think they were decent names, but just on the decline, basically?
Yeah, I think they're on the decline. They were on the way out. They were on negative records going into that fight with Jiří. I'm not trying to take it away, but because I think Jiří's a beast. It's kind of similar to Pavlovich at heavyweight. I think they both have the tools to be long-term champs of their divisions for sure.
Yeah, it's it does come into it that the quality of fights, but I think Pereira's he's only had one fight at light heavyweight. So, but the plus side for him is that apparently he used to struggle at cutting to middleweight. He walks around 225 pounds, and he was cutting 40 pounds, 185 to middleweight. So now he's only got to cut 20 pounds. So in British money, that's 2 stone, just under 2 stone. And whereas before he was cutting 4 stone, and these fighters, they normally do it in the last week, which is crazy. Weight cutting.
His natural weight, light heavyweight was probably more his natural weight in the first place.
Yeah, and maybe at middleweight the weight cut was taking too much out of it. We don't know for sure, but he did move up to light heavyweight, and he was pretty solid against the opponent. So, but I think Jiří, he seems the kind of guy that would look after his body and understand what's required from the physical game, but not just the physical game, the other side of the game as well. So he probably would have done everything he can to get back in shape. But the test is until you get into that cage, and he hasn't been in there for the best part of 2 years. So it's prediction time, and Diamond, I'm going to go to you first. Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, I'm going Jiří. I think he'll just do it, either by KO or submission. But I think he'll win.
Okay. Matt?
It's one of those fights I've gone like 50-50. I've gone back and forth while we've all been talking, to be honest. It's a real tough one. I think the layoff could be a factor, but I think Jiří will get the win. I think his wrestling and his mat game will be stronger. I think Pereira is very, very strong on the stand-up with his kickboxing and potentially slightly better with his striking. But I think if Jiří utilises the mat game and the grappling, I think he will grab the win. Possibly better at that weight class as well. Obviously, Pereira's been not too bad and had an impressive showing last time. But I'll go with a Jiří win, and I will go with a submission win.
SRBMedia. I'm going to be different and go for Pereira. And I'm not saying Procházka doesn't have a chance. He obviously is a special talent, and I just think the layoff could sort of, especially in the later rounds, if it lasts beyond 3-4 rounds, then that could come into play from a cardiovascular fitness perspective, and also from not really being familiar with the octagon in terms of what happens, close range and things like that. Where Pereira, he's been very active this year and best part of last year, and he's probably got his timing down to a T, and he's obviously got power in both hands and feet. So I'm going to go Pereira KO. If it happens, I think it's going to be 3 or 4 as Procházka gets tired, but I wouldn't be surprised if Procházka wins, put it that way.
I can't argue with that, but it's so 50-50 for me. It's going to be one of those fights that I'm actually going to quite enjoy just sitting back and watching, just seeing what happens. Usually I do have a guy that I'm rooting for, but yeah, this is going to be a good one just to sit back and watch, and I'll be fine with either of the guys winning, to be fair.
Yeah. And normally, Matt, you like to put a small bet on, a few shekels?
Yeah, I like to put like a whole main card, but like I said at the start of the show, the main card, I'm not a casual, but it's like I'm not confident enough on sort of the bottom 2 fights of the main card, the main event and the prelim. I'm just not confident enough in all of them, so I probably would give this one a miss and just literally sit back and be able to enjoy and watch without having the bet pressure.
Is that pressure when you got a bet on?
Well, yeah, I feel like I can't enjoy a fight when I've got a bet on. I'm just like really strongly rooting for the guy that I've picked. I just can't watch it and enjoy it and have fun. I have to really be rooting for the guy.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the UFC 295 co-main event and main event. As Matt's mentioned a few times, that normally MSG, I think we normally do 3 or 4 fights of the main card, and it's normally stacked from normally the first sort of fight of the main card up to the main event. But
we're usually raving about it. We're usually like, oh my god, the main of the early prelim is insane. The co-main of the prelim is insane. I just can't say that about this card.
Yeah.
You know, the prelims and early prelims are very much like, I'm not really sure who many of them are. It's a bit odd, really.
I think they were banking on the Stipe versus Jones, basically. I think that was, you know, they're putting all the eggs into that basket where that was going to be the biggest fight. So I think that's where they were going with that.
Yeah, they sure did. But okay, that brings us
also big names. You know, obviously we have got UFC 300 coming up in sort of roughly March, April time next year. I think a lot of big named guys don't want to go onto this card, for example, get hurt in the sort of main event of a prelim, and then be like, oh, damn it, I can't. You know, I think a lot of big names are going to bet on trying to get onto that UFC 300, I assume.
Yeah, especially if Conor McGregor is heading that one, then that will be a huge pay-per-view. Yeah.
If he is.
Yeah. If he's back in the swimming pool, shall we say? No. Sorry. Anyway, on to our special guest, Diamond, and he's got a particular segment he wanted to open up a debate on. So it's over to you, Diamond.
Yeah, cheers, G. No, I just thought we'd talk about legacy. I mean, what is it that creates a legacy or is a long-lasting legacy? The reason I say that is because there's a lot of these YouTuber fighters, not that I've watched any of them, but yeah, there's a lot of YouTube fighters who are fighting at the moment, and let's be honest, they haven't got any talent. So I was speaking to my brother, as G knows quite well, and we were talking about what is it that actually forms a legacy or, you know, draws a crowd. I said to him, you know, it should be just pure talent. That would be, you know, in an ideal world. But unfortunately, that's not the case. It's about how much of a mouth you've got, you know, how much trash talk you can give or banter or whatever you want to call it. So the question I want you to ask is, who in the UFC, who do you believe is going to have the biggest legacy?
Wow.
That's a good one. Go on, Matt. I'll let you go.
Biggest legacy in the UFC. It's tough. It's a tough question, really. Because like you've already said, it should be about talent. In this day and age, it's increasingly about your social media following, and a lot of big companies put a lot of money and numbers on how many numbers you can bring. I hate to. It's become a bit of a sour name, really, in recent years. But I think if you were to look at in recent history, or even since UFC was established, who's had the biggest impact on UFC numbers and UFC feuds, interesting fights, you have to say Conor McGregor. For a number of years, it was talent as well. It was for a number of years, it was the fact that he could have a mix of pure talent and actually put good feuds to use and actually perform in the ring. Obviously now it's souring around him. Even his most loyal fans are sort of getting a bit sick of it. But overall, I just can't think of another name who's had the same effect in terms of pull of pay-per-view numbers, the feuds and rivalries that they've had, and the highlight reels of fights. So I'd have to go for Conor for biggest legacy so far.
Yeah, it's on one hand you can't argue with that, and you know the numbers speak for themselves, the money speaks for itself, and his notoriety or fame, whatever you want to call it, speaks for itself. But then the sports fan comes out, maybe we could say the purist, or which I think where Diamond was going with his question about big mouths and trash talkers and all that kind of stuff. So if we had to put Conor in the great column, which he probably does deserve that, even in his fight skills and what he did. But even the two championship belts that he won, the featherweight and the lightweight, he's never defended the belt. So then we go to John Jones. I think he did 12 at light heavy, 14, something like that. He would have done a lot more, but he kept getting into trouble for various reasons.
Does that tarnish his legacy? How much does it tarnish his legacy, if any?
What, getting into trouble?
Yeah.
But then Anderson Silva was 12 GSP. There was that period of 5 years where you had Anderson Silva, GSP champions at the same time, and then John Jones as well. And they were all defending their belts month in, month out. So yeah, he would. And there was also talk of a super fight, Anderson Silva and GSP, but obviously. But what I'm saying is that it depends on the metric you use. If it's fame and obviously Conor has got an amazing fighting ability. He's a champion, no doubt about that. But he never really cemented that for me as a great. But can't argue against what he did in terms of pay-per-views but legacy. Yeah, it's I suppose in reality, its legacy is who's going to talk about these guys in 20, 30, 40, 50 years in a pub. Probably that's one test of a legacy.
And it's the sort of the general public and who do they know? It's I would define a legacy to be who's branched out and sort of expanded the UFC to other places where it might not have gone before. I think a lot of the general public will know Conor McGregor and then probably not be able to name any other mixed martial artists possibly at all. So because I've always said on the terms of sort of the GOAT conversation, I would put John Jones at the top, just looking at in-cage ability. But if I was to include sort of the outside antics that he's been full of throughout his career, I would then probably put GSP there. So there are different factors which affect it, but I think taking everything into consideration for legacy and probably the amount of money that one man has single-handedly added to the UFC in terms of revenue and like company value, for me, it's got to be Conor. It's got to be the reach that he's had and the reach that he's single-handedly probably helped the UFC branch out to the general public. It can't be ignored.
Yeah, I think one thing we'll explain to the viewers, I think legacy doesn't equal the GOAT. I think they're two separate arguments.
Yeah.
So, like you said, in terms of legacy, yeah, you could definitely argue McGregor. I believe he's brought a lot of casual fans into the UFC. I definitely think that, like you said, if you're going to talk about a fighter, most people are going to know about Conor McGregor. They probably don't know too much about MMA, if I'm honest with you, but they know about Conor McGregor. But what that does do is basically bump up pay for everybody. So I think the UFC, in terms of fighters, need to be appreciative of Conor McGregor for increasing pay and whatever else with that. But like G said, for me, Conor McGregor never defended the belt. He was in the right place at the right time for a lot of it, if I'm honest. And I don't think he had the greatest of talents, but at the same time, he was a very good fighter, very, very good fighter. That's what I would say.
Yeah, one of the arguments used to be that when Conor McGregor was coming up, he was protected against fighting the real wrestlers. Now, obviously, when he won the belt, he fought Chad Mendes, but Chad Mendes came off the couch 9 days before, and Chad Mendes.
You remember that fight? Chad Mendes was, even though he got done with whatever, but yeah, he was dominating that fight, and then he just puffed. And then obviously the fight changed.
He obviously had too many Doritos on the couch a week before. Yeah. But
Conor did in his come-up time though. He did fight some arguably future Hall of Famers. He did beat Poirier and Max Holloway when they were on the rise as well. So I think he definitely was sheltered against real strong wrestlers.
Yeah,
I think that's almost natural. You see it every day in boxing. You know, for the first sort of 10 to 20 fights of your boxing career.
Exactly.
You're not fed cans, but you are, you know, kind of given a lot easier fights, and then, you know, for the real stars, it happens a lot, I think.
Yeah, and that a lot of people maybe don't appreciate that and you said this before, that they're a promotion, and the boxers have a promoter, whereas the UFC are a promotion, so it's slightly different, but the end goal is the same, to make as much money as they can from an investment. Their investment is a talented fighter. So they want to. In boxing, it happens a lot more. Like you said, boxers, you know, we used to go 10-0, 15-0, and then fight some real class. But I can understand why they were protecting him, because they realised that they've got this massive potential cash cow, and obviously it was an amazing supernatural cash cow for them, for sure.
Yeah, but is that fair then?
Fair for who and from which perspective?
Because this is what I was speaking to my brother about this. It's like, of course, he was protected, and he was, the UFC had a big backing, you know, for him, as Dana did. But then you got a person like DJ. Now, he's arguably, you know, greatest talent there was. Now, what did the UFC do for him?
Yeah, kicked him out and swapped him for a funky wrestler. Yeah.
I just think...
Yeah, you're right. And in my analysis, I didn't even mention DJ. And I did think of him, but I just didn't mention him. But you're right, he was 14 or 12 or title consecutive defenses. So, but I think real fans will talk about DJ, but the casuals will just say, "Oh, Conor McGregor."
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, Matt said about the GOAT in terms of he believed obviously Jones or GSP. What about yourself, G? Who would you say
as the GOAT?
Yep.
Yeah, I think pure in cage, whatever. It's for me, it is John Jones, because he was in his first 5 defenses, he beat absolute, champions of champions. Shogun Rua, when he took the belt off him, he tapped him out by literally beating him to death. And people know Pride, Rua was just an animal, and in Pride as well.
And Shogun had an off day that day, but yeah.
Oh yeah. I know he was your number one fanboy. Yeah.
His longevity though for John Jones is incredible. I mean, how many people do we see at the top of their division, carrying the title, and say, I can't see him ever losing, and then they all ultimately do. You can even say Adesanya now is starting to lost the belt a couple of times, and he's got it back and stuff. But it's like John Jones hasn't even hit that point yet where he's like lost it and then tailed off. He's still going and still winning. Like, the longevity is incredible. I know he had like 3 years out.
Maybe that was a good thing, because when he was out, he was resting. He wasn't beating up his body. So maybe.
Yeah, but you touch on longevity with Jones. When do you think Jones's first UFC was? He was
21 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was real early days, wasn't it? It was like 2009-ish, 2010, something like that.
I believe it was UFC 86. UFC 86, so we're in UFC 296. So if we do 296 minus 86, that's 210.
Yeah.
So we divide that by 296. He's been in nearly 71% of the UFC since it's been created. That is great. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible, and that's why I've said for a number of years, in ring cage, in cage ability, and you're not looking at his outside of cage antics. Yeah, for me, it's him. But sometimes you have to acknowledge the issues that he has had, the numerous issues that he seems to get himself into, the trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Matt. I wouldn't put him as the GOAT for the simple fact of his off-screen antics. I would say GSP, personally, for his resume, who he fought, and obviously not getting done. The only thing is GSP was a bit shady towards the end. He done a bit of a runner when USADA came in, but he never actually got convicted as it was. So, yeah, I would say GSP.
Yeah, and I think just going back to John Jones, and I think I may be thinking of an article coming on here for purelymma.co.uk. John Jones' injury, is this the start of the end? Because it looks like, from what I saw, the pec injury or the pec tear or whatever exactly it was, it sort of came from punches being thrown, and that seems quite odd for that to happen for a pec tear. But is this the decline? His body's finally saying all those years of partying, sorry, can't do this no more. I don't know, just chucking it out there.
I think it probably was the start of the decline before the injury. I truly believe this probably was going to be his last one. I don't think he has anything else to prove after that. I think, he's doing what Conor didn't. He won the heavyweight title. He'd like to defend it once against the so-called heavyweight greatest of all time, and then he can say, "Well, there you go. I literally have done everything." And as he's admitted, people like Aspinall and Pavlovich doesn't really interest him, and it probably wouldn't expand his legacy any further. So it probably is the start of the end anyway.
No, I was thinking more just purely on a physical side. I know mentally he's got this legacy sorted in his head and how he wants to exit the fight game. But I'm just thinking from a physical, because he hasn't exactly been a monk on the rock, has he? We all know that. But anyway,
I think wear and tear, you're right. I think he's taking toll at some point.
And you remember it happened to Chuck Liddell. He was knocking everyone out. Then he got knocked out 6 in a row or 5 in a row.
It happens to a lot of fighters. I mean, that's another. That might be a story for another day. But once you get beaten, is it because your body just completely changes, or is it mental side where you felt invincible and all of a sudden not, and that's it? The mental part goes. I don't know.
Maybe that's another subject you can bring in, Diamond. Another topic. Okay, so I think legacies. There's a number of factors, crossover, and who's the most popular, and obviously Conor McGregor still had to be a champion. He couldn't be a 2-10 fighter and still draw all this, so he's still a champion. There's no doubt about that. But legacy can be a number of things to different people. No, thank you for that, Diamond. That's been a really good discussion there.
No, it's good. It's good.
Yeah. So we're coming towards the end of the podcast, but I think we can squeeze in one final question. And this is from Ben from the USA. And he's asking a question about a fairly recent sort of topical in the news, boxing news, MMA news as well, on the recent trend of MMA fighters going to boxing. Recent, probably 3-4 years, I think, is probably a good time frame for that. Could there be a trend of boxers going to MMA? And I think from memory, the most high-profile boxer I can think of is James Toney when he fought Randy Couture, but unfortunately got angle picked in 30 seconds. But
did he? I said he didn't do much at all. I remember that.
Yeah, but I can't remember another high-profile, because obviously James Toney was a triple world champion, light, heavyweight, but I can't think of another amazing, champion boxer who came into MMA. But anyway, Diamond, what boxers, could they come into MMA, reverse the trend a bit, or is MMA too hard?
There's always been talk of it. Amir Khan was talking about it supposedly. I think with MMA it's a different ball game. You're going to have to learn the ground game, and you're not going to have enough time to be able to learn that. Coming off, obviously, you're probably near the end of your career. in boxing, so I don't think you're going to have much chance of being able to defend takedowns, do takedowns yourself or submissions and all that kind of thing, really. So I think it would be very difficult.
Matt?
Yeah, simple answer, no. It'd be boxers signing their own death certificate, I think. It's just, I hate to agree with Dylan Dennis, but it's just not boxing. They like to call it a purer form of fighting, but I wouldn't even call it fighting. It is boxing. It's just, I mean, mixed martial artists, even in fight camps, there's a reason why when they're boxing, they're using boxing gloves, and it's just like, there isn't the time to learn it. There isn't the time to survive it. I think mixed martial arts is the more complete form of fighting. And I think any mixed martial artist just has a lot more skill sets than boxers do. And there's a reason why we haven't seen anything high profile in a number of years. Obviously, we've just seen Fury versus Ngannou, and there was talk that Deontay Wilder was kind of entertaining the idea because there's not enough big names in boxing for him, etc. But I mean, have you seen that guy's legs recently? I mean, one kick and you'd be down and out. So, yeah, there's a reason why we haven't seen it, I think, and I think they're wise to stay away.
Yeah, no, I don't think skinny legs is a barometer for getting knocked out, because John Jones probably has had the skinniest legs since any skeletons, but he's anyway, but his legs were really skinny, but he was a phenomenal kicker. But I know what you mean. Boxing generally, you can't.
He might have thinner legs, but it was like at least they're still conditioned and he's trained for it.
Yeah,
I don't think Deontay Wilder would have. He probably has never kicked or been kicked. So.
No, for sure. He's been boxing for 20 odd years. Diamond, you was going to say something?
No. I'm saying just from what Matt was saying. Yeah, I mean, John Jones has obviously been brought up with that from a very early age. So, like you said, he's conditioned himself. So, yeah, it's totally different in terms of what he's learned over the years. Yeah,
it's obviously for boxers to go the other ways. They've got a lot more to learn. So I can't see a trend. Unless there's some kind of mixed rules, mixed rules, but like an exhibition, bit like when these YouTube boxers, they fight for...
One round this and one round that.
Yeah. And there's been experiments before going back to the early 70s, Muhammad Ali and a Japanese wrestler, Antonio Inoki, it was, and they had a mixed rule. He couldn't kick over this height and he couldn't grab for this level, and then it was mixed rules is always very
it becomes an exhibition then, doesn't it?
That's the arena I think boxers might go into it if the grapplers couldn't do it for more than 30 seconds, so they know they just have to survive 30 seconds and then back on your feet. And there's been various experiments, but it's too much of an exhibition then, and then people are not going to really buy into it, I don't think. It's a good question, I think.
I was really dying to see at some point for like a peak mixed martial artist to go into a full camp for a boxing fight, because obviously Conor went and had the Floyd Mayweather fight, but it was like Floyd is the greatest of all time, the best boxer we've ever seen potentially, so it was hard for him. It was a shame that he didn't go up against somebody a lot less skilled kind of thing to see what really would have happened.
I think, put it this way, did any of you watch listen, I didn't watch it, I didn't pay for it, but did any of you watch Dylan Dennis versus Jake Paul and KSI versus Tommy Fury? Because the talent on that was just non-existent. It was terrible. So I'm sure if an MMA fighter was to train and do a full camp, it would be a lot better than that draft, put it that way.
I did watch. I did watch because it got my interest. Dylan does interest me. I think I really want to see him in the UFC. I think that would be unbelievable entertainment. But I think that event, Dylan Dennis was in it for one thing, and it was for the money. I mean, it was obvious. He went for a couple of chokeholds in that fight, and And even then, even when he went for the chokeholds, I kind of do feel for Vic that all the security did jump in at multiple points, like mid-round. It was a bit of a clown show, that event. Luckily, I didn't pay, but yes.
Because on a bottom record, I didn't pay either. I paid for that.
Oh, careful. The FBI listen to this podcast, so be careful.
I watched it the next day.
Yeah.
But Danis does it. He grabs a lot of people in, and I'm not sure what the viewing numbers were because there's a lot of speculation around it. But he has got a good way of like riling people up, either the right way or the wrong way. You want to see him get knocked out, or in that event, I think a lot of people were kind of rooting for him. Because I think for once he did kind of turn into the good guy. So he's now sort of petitioning to join the UFC. I think it's an absolute no-brainer for Dana White to hire Dylan Danis in the UFC. That'd be absolute comedy. I think it'd be so fun to watch him against some of the... Because I think he's ready to fight like normal guys. I put that in inverted commas. Like normal guys. He's not wanting to come in and fight just the big names. He wants to come in and just prove that he's actually one of the best mixed martial artists and one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
And I've just come up with a while you were saying that, Matt, with a matchmaking fight. Khabib comes out of retirement to fight him because obviously the backstory of their melee. Yeah. Yeah. The eagle flew off the cage. Yeah. So that would be an interesting backstory.
But that kind of event, I agree with you, Diamond. It was a bit of a joke, and I think after it happened, I think we know why Dylan Danis was there. It was for the money. But if he was to actually be serious and yeah, like I say, join the UFC and actually fight normal guys and rack up some wins with his promo skills and everything, I think that would be absolute comedy. I thought that'd be brilliant.
The thing with that was, if you thought Dylan Danis versus Logan Paul was bad, then you had the KSI versus Tommy Fury, and that was even worse. I mean,
almost unspeakable. Yeah, how bad that was.
And Tommy Fury must be thanking his stars. He hasn't got much talent, and he's fighting these YouTube fighters and making millions. It's just he's laughing all the way to the bank.
Well, he's living the life that we'd all take in a heartbeat. Let's be honest.
We'd all do that. Let's be honest. He's been very fortunate to be fighting in an era with all this YouTube fighting craze at the moment. So yeah, I think he should be grateful.
Agreed.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the podcast. It's UFC 295, Prochazka versus Pereira, and that takes place in a couple of weeks. This is a pre-recording. So this is the MMA show sponsored by AtJamesLegal.co.uk and overstevents.com. Just before we go, Matt, you watching anything live or on pay-per-view, or you got anything?
Not live, but obviously UFC 295 I'm really looking forward to. And then it doesn't even stop there, because next month we have UFC 296, which is really exciting. That's going to be Edwards Covington, which should be really, really good. A really nice, top card to end the year on. But yeah, catch us at Purely MMA on Twitter. We're going to be putting out more stories, more and more, so that'll be good. So catch all the latest stories there, and follow us on Twitter or X and keep up with all the discussion points. We like to create articles for open discussion with everybody, so let's catch up with that.
Fantastic. And Diamond, you off to Vegas doing anything like that, or?
No, not at the moment. Hopefully in the future. No, I was just going to say as well, I don't know if you have ever seen something called King of the Streets.
I haven't, no.
No, you haven't. Matt, have you seen that? I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I haven't.
Have a look at it. It's quite raw. I don't know if it's actually legal, but anyway, on YouTube, it's a good production. And basically, they're in like a car park and they're all fighting, and it looks very raw. So check it out. I mean, viewers, check it out as well and see what you think of it. It's called King of the Streets, so it'd be interesting to see your thoughts on it.
Well, that was Diamond Promotions.
To say I'm not part of it or anything, but yeah. But nah, it's interesting to see. But yeah. Just have a have a watch and see what you think, basically.
I think you're after Dana White's job. Yeah. The next president.
Nice to be around years, but yeah.
No, it's that's good. So so we'll have.
Nice being on here. I just want to say it's been really nice being on here.
Oh no, it's.
I appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on and raising a good subject about legacy. So that's definitely been interesting to discuss. And as me and Matt say, this podcast is about a few guys just in a pub discussing, what they passionate about, which is MMA. Those are the topics that come up like that. So that's good. So this has been UFC 295, where there's some articles on purelymma.co.uk. So check out the website. There's always good articles going on. And Diamond, if you want to pen an article for us, then that will be good as well.
Yeah, in the future, definitely.
Yeah.
Good.
So, so this is the MMA Shower, sponsored by HattonJamesLegal.co.uk, Overst Events, and thanks to our friends at SRBMedia, that's SRBMedia.co.uk, who produce the webcast podcast. And head over to their website, and there's various podcasts on music, football, and other styles and genres. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be, and thank you for listening.